Mary Jane, Donna. I'm going to take you to the Gospel of John, chapter 2, starting with verse 1 through 11. This is the beginning of Jesus' ministry as far as John is writing about. He is gathering, and some of his disciples, he has gathered some, and he is still gathering. And they're taking a little break here. This is starting with verse 1 in chapter 2. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. It's the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Father, we ask for your strength and your guidance this morning. We ask that you would place words in my mouth that would be pleasing to you. We ask that you would sit beside us in these pews so that we might receive words that you have for each one of us. In Jesus' name, amen. I've been to a lot of weddings, most of them mine. I've officiated at several. I've DJ'd at a couple of weddings. That's always fun. I've been best man at one wedding. I've sung at a couple of weddings. So I've been around. I've been to a lot of weddings. But by far, the most extravagant wedding event that I've ever been to is that of our son and daughter-in-law, Amy and Aaron. They got married on New Year's Day, 2011 in Kansas City. This was not really a wedding. This was an event. We were still living in Arkansas at the time. And we came up and spent 3 days and 3 nights in Kansas City to attend all of this stuff about this wedding. It was massive. There was a rehearsal dinner, speeches and toasts going on there, gifts and things, flowers and flower girls and ring bearers and bridesmaids in flowing gowns, groomsmen in tuxedos. There was a designated hairdresser, of course, not for us, obviously. They had 2 videographers and then an official photographer. Okay, so they had 2 folks videoing everything going on, and then an official photographer. It was like the Prince and Princess of Wales were getting married. There were camera flashes and lights everywhere. They had unity candles. They had solos in Italian. There was a cello playing. They had communion for everybody, communion for 200 folks. There was carriage rides. It was like 1 degree outside, but we had to ride in the carriage rides, okay? There were bouncy houses for the kids. It was massive. This wedding had 1 of everything and 2 of most. Then after the wedding, there was this huge reception. There was music and there was dancing. The best DJ in KC was there. It wasn't me. There were ice sculptures. There was a groom's cake. There was a bride's cake. Then there was a buffet laid out for everybody. Free buffet. And of course, there was the full open bar. I never dared to ask Amy's dad, Jack, how much it all must have cost, but it probably had to be more than I paid for my first house. I'm pretty sure. It was incredible. It was an undertaking that took over a year to plan. May have been similar to this wedding in Cana that John tells us about. From stories in the tradition, these Jewish weddings could take a couple of weeks sometimes. And this was at least 7 days of feasting and eating and drinking. And you've got to think about what this must have been to this peasant farmer, probably, who's used to surviving on bread and olive oil and cheese and water all year round. And then all of a sudden, you've got to be paying for this meat and real food for a couple of weeks to keep this buffet loaded. A wedding was a time of feasting. In the dull and drab diet of bread and cheese and water, this was replaced by a banquet, a full meal. And of course, then there was this open bar. Every wedding has at least one glitch, a problem. Something goes wrong. It could be something as small as the flower girl coming up the aisle and dispensing the rose petals and then feeling that she has to pick them all up on the way out. Had that happen before. Or the groom who faints while standing at the altar. That's seen that. Could be something big. At this wedding in Cana, there was about to be a big old problem. The problem was that the wedding planner hadn't planned too well. An interesting thing about this wedding is that possibly Mary, the mother of Jesus, was the wedding planner. She had some authority here. It looks like maybe she was in charge of a few things. She may have had some responsibility in this wedding. And the big problem that came upon in this wedding is that they had run out of wine. Now, these folks weren't drunkards by any stretch, but this was that was condemned by the laws. But they connected wine with the hospitality code of welcoming. So running out of wine signified an unwelcoming or an uncaring gesture by the host. In Jesus' day, hospitality, not cleanliness, was next to godliness. So it was imperative that you be a good host, or else it was an insult. Especially at an event in which you were given plenty of time to prepare. It would have been like not having brownies for the youth group. Okay? It would have been like inviting the preacher over for supper and having no pie. The family would have been red-faced. No wine at the wedding, for goodness sake. And Mary sees the dilemma. How could they run out of wine and face the village in the morning? So she did what all good mothers would do. She leans over to her son and elbows him in the shoulder and says, "They've run out of wine. You got to do something." And Jesus replies, "Woman, what concern of that is mine?" Now, I don't know about you, but for that remark, my mother would probably have backhanded me out of my chair. But we are told that addressing his mother this way was not necessarily rude or hostile to Jesus. It was a way of downplaying his bonds to the family. It was a gentle nudge, too, maybe, by Mother Mary to kind of get things going. Kind of push Jesus into the ministry that he was called for. He tells her that his hour has not yet come, though, that it's not the time to start the journey. It's not time to start this walk to the cross. Surely not here, not at this festive occasion when he's surrounded by his friends and his family, and there's music and there's joy and there's dancing and there's singing. Woman, mother, please, not now, not yet, not here. And so she says to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you to do." These words of Mary give instruction then on how to take this man Jesus, who turns from a guest at this wedding to an active participant, one who saves the bride and the groom from disgrace. Servants, do whatever it is that he tells you to do, and everything's going to turn out just fine. In fact, everything will turn out much better than fine, as we see in the story. So Jesus relents to his mother's wishes. The large empty jars are filled with water, gallons and gallons of water. Someone dips in the ladle, takes it to the head waiter. Wine it has become, not just any wine either. No Boone's Farm, not something in a box. Now, I don't know anything about wine. But this water in Cana has been turned into the best wine, it seems. So you see, 6 jars of wine, and these weren't little tiny jars of wine. These jars are probably the 30 or 40 gallon variety. These jars are as big as a water heater. Okay? So let's see. 6 jars at 30 gallons each. If my Arkansas math is semi-correct, that's about 180 gallons of wine, which would probably relate to 700, maybe 800 bottles of wine. Now, the best we know of Cana, population was probably about the size of LaCombe, probably about 600, 700 folks. So that would have been at least 1 bottle of wine for every person in town, with a couple of 100 bottles maybe left over. Surely they were not all at this wedding. What John is showing us is in this miracle, this first miracle of the gospel, is not that Jesus would have been a good winemaker, or that it was any kind of justification for overindulging. What John is showing us is the extravagance of life embodied and embraced in Jesus. He said, I came that they might have life, not just a little bitty tiny life, but an abundant life. A lot of folks I talk to, and I thought this before I went into this line of work and gave my life to Christ, is that we think that sometimes we've got to give up so much. We've got to give up so much to follow Christ, that we have to give up so much when we invite Christ to come into our lives. But if you take a look at this wedding, at the wedding party, what they found out, the direct opposite is the case. Jesus always brings more to the party than was there to begin with. More joy and overabundance of blessing, so much more than was expected. And if you think back and you look back in all the Gospels, remember all the other times when he gave more than was expected. When he was awakened in the bottom of the boat by the disciples so that he could advise them what to do in the midst of the storm. They were just looking for some advice. He calmed the wind and the water. They were astonished because it was more than was expected. When he told the fishermen to cast their nets on the other side of the boat, they hauled in an overabundance of fish almost to the point of capsizing the boat. That was much more than they expected. When he fed the 5,000 with only a couple of sardines, a handful of biscuits, it was more than anyone expected, and there were leftovers for everybody. When he came to live among us and he took up the earthly bonds of our flesh, the same things we would feel and experience the world he created as we would experience, it was much more than anyone expected. And when he went under the whip and the fists and the thorns and the spit, the hammer, and the nails, and the blood, and the sweat, and the tears, and the weight of the cross, was more than any one of us would have been doing. It was more than any one of us would have done. It was more than anyone expected. And when he rose again on the 3rd day, having rolled away the stone at the entrance of death itself, defeating sin and Satan in one triumphant blow, that, my friends, was much, much more than anyone expected. Much, much more than any one of us deserved. That's the love, that's the mercy, that's the grace which is not just sufficient for all, but abundant for all. It never runs out. There's plenty enough for all. Jars upon jars, gallons upon gallons. His grace is sufficient and abundant for you and for me. Whatever we need, whenever we need it. And do you see that it's all right here in this little story from Cana? You see that it's all there? If you ever want to preach a sermon, just read this story to someone. The key to this abundant life that we hear so much about, it's right here in this little story. There's the invitation. First thing that must be done is to invite him to your party. as did this bride's family. He wants to come. He's happy to be there. And look what he brings to the table. Then, as Mary advised the servants, we must do what he tells us to do. But you say, I don't know what he says to me. I can't hear him talking to me. Then I say that you haven't been listening. We can hear him talking if we listen to what he says to us through this word, through our prayers, through our worship, through our stillness. Because he says, be a little still. Be still. Know that I'm God. Then take the ladle. Drink of the abundant new life that he gives. Drink deeply and often. Taste and see that the Lord is good. And finally, we must take what he has given to us so abundantly and share it with all of those at the reception. Take it to all and tell them of the overflowing generosity of the one who can turn water into wine, the one who can turn food for a boy into a meal for 5,000, the one who can take a cruel, rugged cross and turn it into the symbol of love and grace for a sick and dying world. You see, when we invite Jesus to the party, he will bring us much more than we expect and all we'll ever need, now and forever. Thanks be to God. Let us pray.